think so.
Everybody, please have a seat. We'll call to order the, what is this month? March Finance Committee meeting. Welcome everybody here. I do know why a lot of you are here, but you are invited to stay for the entire meeting if you would like. We have a very full agenda today. Without delay, we will start with the consent. Where did Mr. Taylor go?
More chairs.
Oh. Does anybody have anything they want to pull off consent?
C7.
We have C7.
C2
C2,
and C5, I believe.
C5,
C3.
C3, C6.
Let's just call
So
it.
the whole consent agenda, got it.
If my math's right,
50%.
can I get a motion to approve
I move for
C1?
approval.
Okay, to approve the ballots, all in, oh, do you have a second? Y'all do your thing now.
I second.
Push the buttons. There we go. All in favor, please vote. Those are approved. Thank you very much. We will go in numerical order, and I will start with C2. If the secretary please read that one.
Item C2, consideration of resolutions authorizing municipal agreements with the North Carolina Department of Transportation for the maintenance of traffic control signs, marking signals, and computerized traffic signal system.
Ms. Burke, you asked.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and Madam Vice Chair and members, I was concerned about the markings. They're not making them so we can even see them anymore. So how will we assure that the markings, Mr. McCollum, the markings, like when they put the street with this yellow spike, the
Yes,
divided
ma'am.
street, they're so clear now that you cannot even see when it's raining.
The reflectivity in the markings, and that's something that our field office usually will implement. We will make sure that the beading is correct and there. I will share that with our field office.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, with that understanding, I move for approval.
We have a motion. Oh, we have another comment.
I was curious, this just lays out the agreement between us, but it doesn't talk about specific costs, right? I mean, I didn't see any.
Yes,
Any numbers?
the actual agreement does have the cost, and we didn't include that in there. It appears not. We could
Right.
actually have it for the council
So
meeting.
there are
There are
limitations.
associated
We can't
costs.
just do something and call it
No, sir.
a
No.
presentation. Okay.
There's set fees for each of the activities.
Great, thank
How
you.
long is the entire document?
Pardon me?
How long is the entire document?
It's about 20 pages. What we can do is just add the additional
Add the
cost. Okay.
I'll memorize it before the meeting.
Yes, sir.
Okay, do we have a motion? Ms. Burke made
Yeah.
the motion. Do we have a second? It's done. Y'all hang on a minute.
There it is.
There we go. Everybody please vote. That one is approved. Thank you very much. We will now go to C3. If the secretary please read that one.
Item C3, resolution approving an interlocal agreement with Forsyth County for the financing, ownership, and operation of a new parking facility.
This is Mr. Quirk, I guess I'll call on you to give a presentation on this because a number of us had questions on it.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem, Chairman Clark, members of the committee, and members of the City Council.
Good afternoon.
The item before you this afternoon is an interlocal agreement with Forsyth County to participate in the construction of a new parking deck, which will be out here on the corner of First and Church Street. It consists of over 600 spaces. It'll allow for the parking of all city vehicles. The construction of this deck and the timing thereof will also negate the need to build the surface lot that we discussed during the Front Street Capital incentive discussions earlier this year. The city's obligation is 35.4%. That's our percent of occupation of the deck. The county would own it, and we would also pay 35.4% of the annual operating and maintenance costs.
Okay. Ms. Allen, I think you asked.
Yeah. My question is again, and I've talked to the city manager about this. I don't understand how this got over in the limited obligation bonds, the process itself. You know, I know that in January, we were brought a list of projects. This wasn't on that list, was it not?
It was on the list.
The list?
We wouldn't actually, for this one, we wouldn't actually issue any lobs. The county is going to do the financing, but it would we'd fund it for the debt service fund, Councilmember Adams, which means it would reduce our lobs capacity by the equivalent of $5 million. We did bring this for informational back in December, January.
January.
And the reason it's back now is we're at a point, because the county's already started design. Mr. Rao is participating on that work group, correct? Where the county needs to know, they pass an interlocal agreement, whether to build a deck with or without us. So timing was forcing us to bring it in now.
And I will say, I asked the city manager to put this on the agenda because we're either gonna have to fish or cut bait with the county. It's, I guess if we say no, they build a deck that's 2 floors short or whatever.
Well, Councilmember Clark, I don't have a problem with the project. That's the piece
Yeah.
that everybody keeps missing. The issue I have is the process. You know, if this is not how we govern. You know, we don't, if this was time sensitive and needed to be brought to the council members should have been informed accordingly. I mean, it came in January, but the time sensitiveness of it, and being that, as you just said, it's going to reduce the debt by $5 million.
It's the same as if we did it ourselves, yes.
I know. And then, you know, I just have an issue with that. Again, I know everybody wants this deck. They want a deck somewhere. But then at the bottom where it says participation in this agreement will negate the need for the proposed temporary surface lot included in the city's economic development agreement with Front Street Capital and their redevelopment of Bailey South and the adjacent Morris building for $500,000 plus the new deck will accommodate all of the parking for city vehicles currently at 4th and Church. Again, it's just a process. And I don't know, you know, the council, how you all want to handle this going forward, but I do have a problem with this. And I know everybody, as Councilmember Clark said, we either going to do it or not do it. But again, you can't bring projects to this council and ask us to vote on them when the information hasn't been given us accordingly that, okay, in March, you're going to be seeing this again, and we need to vote on this because the council, the county wants us to sign the agreements.
Okay, thank you. Any other, Mr. Larson?
We're gonna get 100 and something parking spaces out of this deal? Is that what the way it looks?
Yes, sir. 183 dedicated spots.
Where, are they all on the top deck out in the rain, or do we get to choose where our parking spaces are gonna be, or are people gonna have to walk all the way up 5 flights to get?
I believe it's the top 2 floors.
So we're gonna be in the sunshine at the top.
Primarily, it'll be the city vehicles, not the employees or visitors to City Hall.
When do we expect, what's the schedule for implementation of building this? Do we have any idea when this might come online?
Like 12 months, I think, is what they're aiming for.
And this is all information I'm just trying to gather, because we're obviously voting, I'm not voting with you guys, I just have questions.
Mr. Larson, you have the floor. Ask
But
me.
could I ask also, my understanding is this is paid out over multiple years? This is not a one-time payment to the county?
No, it's they would finance it and we would cover the 34.5% debt service over the terms of the debt.
Which is what, how many years?
20 years, I think.
So it's a long payout on this, basically. And we don't generate any revenue from this at all, do we?
We'll have a separate operating agreement where we will use the same percentage to split both the expenditures to operate the deck, which I think Mr. Kane estimates might be, the total cost might be around $90,000 a year based on our history. Our share would be 30 of that, right?
Yes, sir. And that's basically worst case based
Yeah.
on the revenues, because whatever the operating expenses are offset by revenue.
Revenues, right.
So our operating and maintenance costs are offset by the revenue?
That would be the goal,
And our
right?
payout is over 20 years,
Right.
right? And so it's $5 million.
Mr. McIntosh.
Like we discussed, we were talking about the service parking lot. we will be getting revenue from spaces that we now occupy over on the 4th Street deck, is that correct?
That's correct.
And that's a fairly significant amount of money, it's not
Right.
inconsequential. Thank you.
And does that money go back in the general revenue, or does that go against this project?
It goes back in the parking fund.
Yes, Ms. Burke, go
I
ahead.
was going to ask the city manager, so we would not have had the conversation that Councilman Adams, what should have been done to prevent it the next time? Or could it have been?
Well, we could have had more conversation one-on-one. We did, again, bring it back several months ago. We did send it in the selected highlights item, but we could have had more conversation earlier with each council member, so there weren't any surprises.
Ms. Adams, you have.
One more comment or question, Mr. Garrity or Mr. DeCane. The last paragraph, what does this do, since it was thought enough to put it in here? What does this do for those developers? See, that's the piece that's missing for me. You know, we're doing this, but yet somebody decided to put this last paragraph in here that raised a flag for me.
Good afternoon, Chairman Clark, Mayor Pro Tem Burke, and members of council.
Good afternoon.
I jumped up to take that question. If you remember, this was back in September of 2018 that a request from Front Street Capital was brought before the council requesting financial assistance for their development of the Bailey Power Plant. Ooh, excuse me. If you remember, essentially what they were asking for was financial assistance to create a surface lot that would free up the spaces in the 4th Church Chestnut deck that they needed to serve their new development. Those spaces were occupied by city vehicles, and they were essentially asking for the cost it would take to create and construct a replacement surface lot for city vehicles. So that money was going to be used exclusively for the development of a surface lot that the city would then park its vehicles in. So with this opportunity that's on the table, is essentially as opposed to parking the city vehicles that would have to be relocated from that deck in a new surface lot that ultimately we would not own, we have the opportunity to move those vehicles to the proposed new courthouse deck.
I guess, again, this goes back to the information and the way it's communicated. First, if we'd had those one-on-one conversations, and we'd had some of the other staff in the room with maps and other details to this deal, Mr. Garrity, it wouldn't be an issue right now. But again, Councilmember Clark, I'm just, like I said, it's my responsibility to ask these questions.
That's fine, no problem.
And I just, Mr. Evans, Riley, I don't have a problem with you. It's just, again, it's the way this was handled. And I still, even going forward before council, I won't be voting for this until I get the information that I need to see how all this played out. Because again, that last paragraph was the flag raiser for me. Okay? Thank you.
Mr. Raleigh, how much is Robin Team's group paying us for the spaces they're renting?
They will be paying us, I'm not sure what the total, it'll be $45 a space for 180 spaces, whatever that math works out to be.
Multiply 45 by 80 real quick.
Let's see if I can work it out.
I don't have enough fingers.
Let's see.
Anybody got a number yet?
So that's about $97,000 a year annually. There you go.
That's what I was getting calculated. Anyways, let me back up a minute, be sure everybody understands what's going on here. Robin Team and his organization wanted to add, I think it's an office building on the second half of Bailey Power Plant that hasn't been touched, and I'm gonna guess it's 100,000 square feet or something.
It's about 75,000 square feet in Bailey and an additional 25,000 in the Morris building.
About $100,000 office
Total,
building being
yes.
built. And Bailey's the one where the old smokestacks are down in the
Correct.
eastern part. Basically, what he asked from the city was, would we rent him 180 parking spaces, is what he wanted. And we said yes, because we're getting the tax revenue from the building, and we're getting $97,000 a year for the parking spaces. The challenge we had is we used those parking spaces to park city vehicles. So at the time that we made that agreement with Mr. Team, and by the way, I would appreciate in this version for the city, for the full meeting, put in the exact number of the rent we're getting and the property tax we're getting off of his building, because I think it's a considerable amount of money. We had to find a place to park all these vehicles, and at that time, we came up with a surface lot that was gonna cost $522,000, that we weren't gonna own the land. We could use it for 5 or 10 years, and that was it, and we still had a problem what to do next. Now, same time we're doing this, as y'all all know, the county is looking at building a new courthouse. And it's been going round and round since, Lord, I don't know how many years they've been going round and round on that. And they talked about, renovating the one they got and adding to it, building another one. They had a thing on the ballot whether or not to have a property tax or sales tax to pay for, and all that. And it's been still up in the air. But as part of, I think they finally decided they're going to build a new courthouse and build a parking deck to service it. And when that came up, somebody had the smart idea saying, wait a minute, instead of spending the $500,000 on a surface lot that we're going to use for 5 years, let's see if the county would be willing to put a couple more floors on the parking deck, and we'll just pay for that. So that's kind of why we're here. If you really trace the origin of this is when Team wanted to build his 100,000 square foot building. I think it's a great plan. I do know there was a lot of negotiation with the county on this. Even though we're both government entities, there was a lot of give and take. And Ms. Adams, what I know from it is the county kind of stopped and started on this thing for quite some time, and then finally decided, okay, we're going to build a deck. Do y'all want, I think it's 2.5 floors, something like that, of the deck. And then it became time sensitive, that we had to make a decision, either we want to buy in or not. And I made the decision, rightly or wrongly, let's go ahead and get the input from the council. If we want to do it, fine. If not, fine. I think it's a great idea. There's not enough parking downtown. This will certainly help. And instead of our employees walking to the 4th Street deck, they're going to walk, I would say, a third the distance to this deck. And there will also be some public parking in it, too. But I do think Ms. Adams has a very good point. I think it'd be helpful to add probably a second page and recapture the Bailey Power Plant event, because that's what's triggering all this.
Certainly.
And that would be very helpful, because I would say the property tax on $100 million would be considerable as well.
Sure.
100,000 square feet.
100,000 square feet. excuse me.
Yes, and to that question, Chairman Clark, the proposed new development is about $25 million anticipated taxable value, so that's about $150,000 a year in revenue that we recognize from the
And we're
deal.
getting roughly 100 from the rentals, so
Correct.
that's about $250 a year. we're
Correct.
getting. To offset, and Mr. Larson, your point, the county's borrowing the money, we're simply paying 35% of the payment each month. But that's the same as us encumbering $5 million.
Right.
Because we're pulling off some of that income and coming down here and helping the county off. Now, the good news is we've got a 30-year initial term and then 5-year additions thereafter and 5-year increments. Now, we won't actually own it. We'll simply be a tenant or a leasee. Is that, I'll look to our lawyer there.
Yeah, we'll be a leasee, but we've worked extensively with the county to make sure that they can't kick us out without our approval.
Mr. Chairman, I think the councilwoman just merely wanted us to understand the process.
Yes.
The procedure. Now, my question, how much diversity will we be having as far as who's going to be contracted in certain jobs? What about that? Did we look at that?
Defer. I haven't been a part of the conversation on the construction of the deck, Councilmember Burke, but colleagues have it.
The county did not set specific NWVE goals, but they did require that the proposers submit a statement of how they plan to encourage participation in the project, but I can provide additional information.
Okay, thank you.
I need to say
ma'am.
this because years ago when I asked about the employment at this city as far as minorities and diversity, introduced the MWBE, somebody wanted to compare us with the county. I say it'd be a disgrace and a shame, no better than our county as far as diversity. Now, we have said clearly, we know that the mayor will go out and he will talk with these developers. But we look to the city manager because we, 8 of us, we're the ones who make the decision whether or not something's going to happen today or tomorrow or never. And what we're saying, Mr. Finance Chair, I'm sure they may have communicated with you. I think you told them to go forward, did you?
I simply told them to put it on the agenda.
All right, so see, you have a vice chair that also, we should have extended that courtesy. That's all we are saying. And then as far as the job opportunities, I have said to this mayor, when she was sitting here, that we spend a lot of the taxpayers' dollars, and we're supposed to be stewards for the taxpayers. But yet and still, when you look at what we're doing here, we don't see a number of minorities who live in this community who are unemployed and underemployed being given that opportunity. And it's going to, and I'll say it in front of his face, it's going to take the mayor to take that kind of leadership. I tell him he takes the leadership with development, economic development, with the majority men. Well, the minority men and women want that same opportunity. I hope we can understand that.
Okay, thank you. And, oh, there is one question that isn't answered here that everyone may have in your mind is the county going to build a new courthouse? And that is still up in the air, from what I understand. They're still,
I think they've made that decision now. I mean, that's one of the reasons they told us that they were in a hurry to do the deck is because they need the deck open before they start construction because they lose that lot on the north side.
okay, well, whatever, but they're still, that's their problem. Okay. Any other question? Yes, Ms. Larson.
Could I follow up on the finances regarding a Front Street property in that deal? When the idea was originally to put a ground space build a parking space, so I think it was over in, somewhere in this Stadium Drive or somewhere.
Correct.
Was Front Street putting up any money in that part of the deal? Did they have any money, and were they going to underwrite any cost or any expenses dealing with that part of the building of an alternate parking deck?
Essentially, so the Councilmember Larson, that funding was basically what they were requesting from us. We were pledging a portion of the increment that was going to be generated by the project back to the project solely for the construction of that surface lot. So we were only essentially providing them with what it was going to take to construct that surface lot.
So we were going to take the rental money from renting the spaces to build that lot?
Tax increment.
Correct.
They're doing,
Right.
I'm sorry?
We're going to take part of the tax increment, part of the tax.
Tax value of that. So we were going to allocate that to build that parking deck. But we're not doing that to pay for, in other words, what I'm asking is whether we should be protecting the lob here by how we allocate the revenues generated from the parking deck rentals and tax increase and using that money to pay off the creation of this parking deck. So it's a trade for trade. We're creating parking instead of tapping into the LOBs.
I just talked to Mr. Rowell. It might make sense. There are lots of questions. I mean, I think hopefully the county can wait a month. There are a lot of questions coming up.
Now, let me be clear. I think it's an important project.
Right,
I don't want to, and if it means screwing up our relationship with the county with that, but I'm more. What relationship? Yeah, more. But I do think there's some questions about, about how we pay for this project and whether or not the money needs to come out of the LOBs or not, or whether there's and whether or not Front Street has a role still to play in all of this, as far as what they committed to do and why we're doing this for them and what have you. And maybe somebody else can answer this better.
To pick up on that, could the payment from Front Street for the leased parking spaces be used as a pay-go portion of it and do a hybrid financing model so that it doesn't affect the lobs as much? And I've looked to Ms. Sanders to answer that.
I suppose I might look to our CFO to maybe answer the question. I'm not, yeah.
We're just funding it, so could we take part of the money and bridge it with part of the money in the debt service fund? Yes, we could.
Yeah.
It won't be enough.
We're no security.
Right.
I mean, it's not going to be enough because between the parking and it's $250,000 a year,
And
and you're talking debt service of $500 a year probably.
let me suggest this. Mr. Ralph, or Mr. Garrity, check to see if the county can hold a month. I think there's a valid point there. If we channel the $150,000 or the $97,000 rental from the parking deck, our old parking deck, into the debt service fund, that would offset part of the money that we're paying the county for ours, and that would free up some of the loss.
Reduce the, yeah.
So why don't we hold it in committee? Now, if y'all call and they find out that,
We'll let you know.
let us know. We may just have to put it on the general agenda without a committee recommendation, because I don't want the county to go forward and just forget about us.
It's only 3
But I don't think they're ready to sign a
And
contract.
it's only 3
And
weeks.
Mr. Chairman, remember, we've been trying to develop a positive relationship
Yep.
with them. We don't have any problems. It was the procedure that we,
Yep.
that's all.
Okay, so we will get some more information there. Thank y'all very much. Hang on a minute. That was C3. We're now up to C5. Secretary, please read that one.
Item C5, resolution awarding contracts for cleaning services at Bowman Gray Stadium, the Winston-Salem Fairgrounds, and the Dixie Classic Fair.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
asked
This
that.
yours? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I wanted to know, who is this company?
Mr.
Mayor
Ralph?
Pro Tem Burke?
Yeah.
Good afternoon. So we are awarding 2 contracts, one for Bowman Gray Stadium and then one for the Winston-Salem Fairgrounds and the Dixie Classic Fair. Grime Guru is a local NWB company that has been providing this service at Bowman Gray Stadium when Winston-Salem State University was operating and maintaining the stadium under an agreement with the city. Got very good feedback from the university about the quality of their work. Affordable Cleaning Services is also a local company that has been providing cleaning services at the fairgrounds and for the Dixie Classic Fair. We went through a proposal process, and both of those firms got the highest scores. Affordable Cleaning Services made a commitment to meet the city's 10% NWB goal for contracting, and so that was the basis for the recommendation from staff. The Public Assembly Facilities Commission considered this proposal last week and recommended approval.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Burke.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted that to be,
Yes, ma'am.
so I move for approval.
We have a motion on, what are we on, C5? Is there a second? Somebody? I got it. I don't have it. Just hold tight. This has to go all the way up to the satellite and back down. There we go. Everybody, please vote. Okay, that is approved. Thank y'all very much. We will now go to C6. The Secretary, please read that one.
Item C6, consideration of items related to the Washington Park Stream Stabilization Project located in South Ward.
I'm not sure who pulled this.
I did.
Ms. Burke? Oh, you did? Okay.
I did. And my question is only about what is remaining in that fund. How much money is still available? I know we've got several needs in Northwest Ward, and I'm trying to gauge whether there's going to be any money left to do them.
The actual stormwater fund, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will have to get staff to give you the exact numbers on that.
Okay.
Okay.
So we can get that before Monday.
We'll add
Yeah.
that for Monday. Any other questions?
Thank
This is to stabilize the creek going through Washington Park.
And also, while we're at it, at what rate are we replenishing that?
Excuse me?
At what rate are we replenishing the
Right.
stormwater fund?
Not fast enough.
Right.
I think there's a chart that shows it
Yeah.
going,
Yeah.
that shows the inflows
Yeah, we've
and
seen it
outflows.
before, but I just wanted to
If
get,
we'll show an updated of that for the meeting Monday, that'd be very good.
thank you.
Can I get a motion on this?
Motion approved.
We have a motion by Mr. McIntosh. We have a second. Everybody hold tight. Everybody please vote. That's approved. Thank y'all very much. The next item is C7.
Item C7, consideration of amendment to the fiscal year 2018-2019 budget ordinance for the city of Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Is Miss Tony here? Oh, I can never see you. You sit right behind the podium.
She
Can
does
you-
that on purpose.
She does that, hides from me. There are a number of items on here. Could you kind of go over this for us, and then we'll answer any specific questions?
Okay. Well, first, good afternoon. to you, Chair, Mayor Pro Tem Burke, and members of the council.
Good afternoon.
Before you is our standard, what we call a catch-all for budget items. The first one is the police department has received additional federal forfeiture funds, and it just shows a breakdown of how they plan to utilize those funds. Officer training, purchase of equipment, and informant activities. The second item is just a carryover from an item you all approved last month, and it appropriates funding for this North Carolina Clean Energy Technology Center to convert 31 vehicles to propane as a biofuel energy system. The third item is a stormwater management. Department received additional sponsorship resources, and this item just is a budgetary item to move those funds so that they can use the funds to in their budget. And the last item is it's about the new Bellevue Recreation Center and Park. This item is at the Bellevue Recreation Center is at 2800 Burgundy Street. In order to better serve the neighborhood, it's proposed to use $1.5 million of the $20 million in available debt capacity for a new recreation center. And that will include a gymnasium, a dedicated classroom and workspace for the city SOAR program, youth build programs, a computer lab, meeting space, a new playground, park facilities, and some more lighting inside and outside of the facility. If you have additional questions about Bellevue, Assistant Manager Tasha Logan Ford can address those questions.
Okay. I do know there are a number of folks in the room particularly interested in the Bellevue Rec Center, so maybe you can just give a few words on that. Why don't you come to the thing so everybody can see you?
Absolutely. Chairman Clark, Mayor Pro Tem Burke, and members of the committee, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We have several needs at a number of our recreation centers, and Bellevue is one that could be redesigned and redeveloped to better meet the needs of the community. What you have before you is a proposal for us to have a consultant on board to help us work through the design process for Bellevue. We would look at how to best orient the facility on the site. We would look at demolition of the existing center, along with an outdoor basketball court, the playground, and also looking at the parking facilities on site. As our budget director briefly went over, we would look at having a new construction, a new building constructed on this site to accommodate a recreation center. We would have improvements in a new gymnasium, dedicated workspace and classroom space for SOAR, for youth build, but also that could be used for community members as well. We would have meeting space for community groups, new playground, improve the parking facilities, improve lighting for the facility. Now, what the complete construction would cost for the facility, we would not know that until we get further into design, but this would be that initial step for us to begin that process.
Any questions, comments? Yes, ma'am. Oh, Mr. Taylor, you go. It's just your baby.
Well, yeah, thank you, Ms. Ford. She stole a lot of my thunder, but I just want to, I always speak in favor of the people of the Southeast Ward, and today particularly, I'm going to speak in favor of those in the Bellevue community and those who have joined them in the Easton community on support of this project. This is $1.5 million that would do everything that Ms. Ford so eloquently put. I know, Councilmember Burke, you mentioned providing jobs and opportunities for people in the city. Many of our communities over time did start to decline. We put programs together to work with folks who might have felonies or misdemeanors, or young people in our community who need to learn a trade or profession. Both of those particular programs are housed in Bellevue. We'd like to build a state-of-the-art facility that not only houses them, but provides, a homework computer lab for young folks in the community. Maybe we can partner with CP3 or some other reputable agency that provides athletic training to get young people in college and to provide opportunities for people who are in this particular chamber, who are seniors, who want to do something in the community as well. But before I say anything else, I want you to know that, I posted this on social media and there were well over 250 people who spoke or liked in favor of supporting this project. This room today is filled with friends and neighbors of the Southeast Ward who are in support of this project. And please, everyone here who's here in favor of the $1.5 million for Bellevue, if you please stand. If you can't stand, if you just raise your hand and be recognized. Thank you so much. I wanted you to do that because I want people to know, and I want the council to know, and I want you to know as neighbors that we take you seriously. We've heard what you sent me down to City Hall to do. We're doing that today. I think this is something that could pass. Now, I do not sit on the Finance Committee. As you see, there are 4 people who were able to make that decision, and I understand that the mayor is also in support, so if it passes today, you will not need to come back on Monday. But this is something that's important to you, it's important to me. We're going to fight for it and try to get it done for the community. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, before you move forward, I think it's important for us when we have a minister in the house, that Bishop of the Waltown Baptist Church is here. He has one of the oldest churches, and that's why it's called First Waltown Baptist Church. So Bishop Dennis, would you just let them just raise your hand, Bishop?
Reverend Dennis Bishop, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
So you're Bishop. But he's a bishop.
His name is. I was born one. Yes. What Bishop is saying, his name is Bishop, but also he is a bishop by being in the First Waltown Baptist Church.
Right.
We respect that position. Yes, Bishop.
Okay, thank you for being here. Everybody else, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Let me begin by saying, for the record, I am not against the project, and I need everybody to understand that. I've talked with the council member, but I'm against the process. No one is against, I think, here in this council, in this body, is against the project in Bellevue. We've heard about it now for over a year or two. We know of the council members' dreams, but the issue that I have is the process. The limited obligation bonds is $20 million, basically. We made a commitment to help Bowman Gray Stadium, the updates, since the school didn't buy the stadium. But the stadium is part of the infrastructure that we all own, and there are things that have to be done to keep it up. That's $9 million. We also, have made some other commitments. But in January, in our Finance Committee meeting, this was put on hold, along with a list of projects that came to this body that no one had seen. No one had vetted. I know the council member has been, he put it together. I understand all of that. But the process wasn't transparent to the rest of us. The rest of us didn't have an opportunity to get our constituents down here to stand up for the projects that we want or need in our communities. All I asked the city manager to do, and his staff, was to let the council have an opportunity to present our projects or our needs in our communities, and then do like we've done with the bond packages. Let you guys come to community meetings. I know the Southeast Ward has already done that, but the other 7 didn't get a chance to do that. All I'm saying is I'm not against the project, and I've made that quite clear to Councilmember Taylor and the city manager. But I am against this process. Again, this is not the way we govern, and this is not the way we should start governing, Councilmember Clark.
By the way, I did not have anything to do with putting this on the agenda, so I completely understand this one. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Councilman Clark, Mr. Chairman, I think I had everything to do with putting it on the agenda. And I want to say this. I respect the fact that we need to revamp and take a look at the process. I think your words are well received. But I don't believe that evaluating the process should get in the way of this particular project. We all know all across the country, there was a report by the Brookings Institute that was recently on MSNBC that said that African American communities, and this is one of the historic communities, were devalued across the country. And if you look at a map, there were some circles that show Forsyth County. In this county, they were devalued across the country by billions. There were a lot of people, when the county came through the last couple of times and reevaluated these good people's properties, They lost a lot of money in equity. They lost a lot of value in their homes. And we're trying to find ways to systematically put things in the community to raise property values, give people a sense of pride like we did with the community sign, and get our communities back working and back in order. So though I am in favor of repairing the process, I think that this is as urgent as it could possibly get. And in the meantime, I don't think these people need to suffer while we work through it.
May I say, are they going to suffer? I think that word suffer, I don't think they're going to suffer. They just have to have patience to what is going to take place. Here again, we go to the same thing. If we do not set the tone of what we expect for this city manager to do, we have, and I'm not against, they're the First Church in a historical area. I've supported them. I'm not against this. All the councilwoman is saying, the procedure, the process, how we do things. And if we think we can just up and do things, that's not the way we do business if we are supposed to be stewards for all of these people, looking at the tax dollars, because it's going to be some of mine. Each of the 7, our money. And I don't want to bring something else up. Some years ago, we had a city manager. He allowed one of his staff people, Alan Jones was working when that was happening, he knows about it. He allowed one of his staff people to make a decision that did not do fair. And that staff person denied or gave wrong information to one of the elected officials, to Jack Kavanaugh, and there were only several Republicans on there. And we can say that they truly supported we 3 black Democrats. But when that man did that, Orville Power wasn't here too long. I'm not talking about you.
Just in case.
Just in case. I do
You
understand.
understand? So it may not, this may not be major to some, but it is important that we follow a procedure.
My only suggestion is, and I've been to the facility, and I know it's a little dog-eared. We've all got dog-eared facilities, but timing, I think, is, I'm not going to say it's critical, but I don't think this is something that we should allow to lag and just lay out there. Can we set some sort of timetable towards making a decision? Because like I say, we've all got things, projects in our ward that we want to look at. Can we set some parameters as far as time?
Excuse me, Councilman Clark, but this is what we asked for in January, did we not? Mr. Garrity, we did. We asked in January when you brought the list the first time with those 6 or 7 projects on it. We said, when the list comes back, give us the list, give us the timelines, give us something to work with, so when it came this time, which I didn't know it was coming this time, that we would have ample time for all of us to give input as to how the process is going to go. This had nothing to do with holding up Bellevue. Because if we had done what we had said we were going to do, check the minutes of January, then we would be making decisions, Councilmember Taylor, right now.
Chairman hadn't had a second. I believe it was at your strategic retreat that you made the comment there's a study being done of all the rec centers.
Yes, that's a maintenance study. Right?
That's what I mean, yeah, which is going to look at how many rec centers do we have?
There's the man back there.
And if you could name them and what ward they're in, please. This isn't a test, there's not that many of them.
Street addresses.
If you allow me to get my laptop out, I can answer that question for you. Chair, we have 17 recreation centers throughout the city of Winston-Salem.
So it's not just rec centers, it's...
No, the deferred maintenance study looked at all of our recreation facilities,
like
parks, and facilities throughout the city.
South Fork, one of them?
Yes, sir.
Because it's not a rec center, you play bridge there, that's about it.
We still go.
It's considered a rec center. It's actually a special place because we have the cricket's nest there as well.
Yeah, but I mean, I think of a rec center with a basketball court and things like that. Anyway, okay. The reason I asked you that question, well, let me ask one other question. This is $1.5 million, and that's basically to do the architectural and
No.
that type of stuff, or?
Project.
It is for the design, and a portion of that could go towards construction, but we have to get the design based on.
That's what I mean, it's that part.
It is that part, yes, sir.
So the next step would be to hire a firm to do that.
Exactly.
And then they would do that, and we'd go out for bids.
We would go out for bid, and at that point, we would work through a design process, and that would give us an idea of what the construction number would look like.
Okay, when do you think the maintenance study will be done for the 17 rec centers throughout the city?
We have I want to call it a preliminary version, but we do have a version of the study in-house right now that staff is reviewing. As soon as we dot all the i's and cross all the t's on that, we will be releasing that information and providing it on our website.
The reason I ask that, and for the folks out there, we keep mentioning this $20 million. We've got $20 million of a borrowing capacity, we think, that we can use in the next at least 5 to 7 years. So the question is, if we got that much borrowing capacity, that's in addition to the bonds that were passed. This is additional borrowing capacity. What would we like to do? By the way, the parking deck we've held for some additional information. The question here is, this is $1.5 million that's for the design work and all that, and maybe some construction, but I would guess to build a whole new rec center would be...
It might be, because this one also has the potential of having a whole section for youth build and sewer. It could be more like 2 or 3 million. We have talked about the potential of using some of the economic development bonds for that because of the job training piece of the center.
But I do think one thing that needs to be mentioned, and I think what has already been alluded to, there's 17 centers in various degrees of newness or oldness or whatever, and there's an X amount of fixed money, and a lot of it's been not promised, but requested. And without that study to know where we are, somebody could get left out. And does it make sense to do one without even knowing what the others are going to cost? For example, Ms. Burke may have a rec center that needs $500,000, and Ms. Scipio may have one that needs $4. You have 4. You may need $1 million or whatever. Anyway, that's just a concern I have that we're going to find from this study. It sounds like it's close to being done.
Yes, sir.
That it might be $6, $7, $10 million. Pick a number. And then, am I too far off?
Well, it also looks at all our parks and swimming pools, so it's higher than that.
Okay, it's higher. Okay.
Slightly.
Slightly. Okay.
Yeah.
It may be big number, but the point being, there's limited funds, and the question is, who gets those funds? And I think what's being raised here, does it make sense to simply give it to a council member because he happened to request that it be in the committee, or do we want to use a more thoughtful process to look at where we spend that money? And the mayor has kind of made a commitment with Winston-Salem State that's $8 million, I think, something like that. Nine. I'm trying to round down a little bit, get away with it. So we're at 20, we're 5 for the parking deck, 9 for the mayor. I'm down to 8. Y'all can do the math. Yes, Gary.
Perhaps what we ought to do, I mean, we're trying to finish up the capital projects plan for the new bonds, as well as an update on the ones that have not been completed, which includes Meadowlark, as you know. Perhaps maybe another way that council might want to do this is to schedule a separate committee of the whole meeting where we could brief you on the past process, the maintenance plan that came from Recreation. I'll tell you on Bellevue, that plan, I mean, there's some things at Bellevue, but Bellevue is not in terrible condition. The issue with Bellevue is doesn't meet the needs of what we're trying to do there, size and structure. But we could bring all that along with all these other projects that are out there to committee, and then you have a discussion in that format. That might be a better way to do it.
I think that sounds good, but
Yeah.
may I
Yes,
see,
ma'am.
some of us, and we've had people to support that bond, and if we don't do it in a fair, equal way, now don't get twisted, what about that with the Russell? Will we still be getting that one? See how
That's
this starts changing?
that's in the 2018 bonds, but that is in that report. We can show you where we are on all those, what the schedule is, and then look at, because I know several other council members, including Councilor Bessie, who's not here, have also expressed interest in other projects.
May
Yes,
I
ma'am.
finish? We know that Bellevue, and I agree with the councilman, that's one of the most historical places for blacks. And it has not been given the attention that it should be given. And what the councilman is saying, that this will be the state of an art, if this is built. This will be a place that we've been talking about where people, minorities, can read at the 3rd grade level and cannot get jobs. The councilman is saying there'll be an opportunity where there'll be certain types of careers that they can look. Also, there'll be opportunities for minorities who don't know the history of Bellevue. They have the opportunity to learn, and when they learn that history, they're going to learn the history of other historical places where minorities struggle and work. So I'm not against the project. I misunderstand.
The mayor has his hand up, then I come to Mr. Better.
I think that's a good suggestion, Lee, to bring it forward, but my only concern is, don't we have a pretty tight time frame on the parking deck?
We talked about that before you got here. Parking Deck's going to have to come back next month at the very latest. Have you heard anything else, Ben? But at the very latest, because of they're moving ahead. But as far as everything else, we could bring maybe a schedule workshop. I think the budget one's too tight, but already, well, Ben's maybe we'll figure out when we could do it. Maybe in April. And there's another project that's not on the list that we're working on. Novak Bridge in Councilmember and Mayor Pro Tem Burke's ward is out, and we're trying to find a way to get that fixed. She could bring as many neighbors too. As
Mr. Mayor, let me comment, if I can go back
I apologize.
30 minutes.
I had a
That's fine.
job where I get paid at.
Point of order.
The issue on the parking deck really goes back to the Bailey Power Plant and giving up the spaces. And what we've asked for the staff to kind of pull all that back together again, and also look specifically if we can allocate the parking revenue we're going to get from Robin Team's group to the debt service fund, which will free up some more of the law.
Makes sense. Thank you. Excuse me for going back to something you already done.
No, that's fine.
And I want to say too that relative to Bellevue, I think Councilman Taylor's been working with this neighborhood for a long time on this, and they pulled together. What I like, as Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem said, the combination of the uses there, you know, recreation, the SOAR, and the others, that just make a lot of sense. It's a new type of use of these facilities. I'm totally supportive of his effort there.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the comments. I don't think anybody's against this project, and I hope you show that this evening with your vote. I think I respect Carl Russell, and I respect the other 16 or 17 rec centers in this community. I respect the parking deck. But at this moment in time, we're not talking about any of those. We're talking about Bellevue. We got a room full of people here who are here in support of this project. Now, we're talking about process. We've been hearing about the concept of limited obligation bonds for some time now, for months. We've met with the neighbors. I've had a couple of different meetings on a number of occasions with the neighbors about this project. We brought it to committee in the right fashion, and it's here to be heard today. Now, if there was a fire on one house, we would not go and put out fires on the rest of the houses in the neighborhood. We put out the fire on that one house. There is an issue in Bellevue where we need the community and economic development. We need to build space for these programs that are making a difference in the lives of others. This isn't a rec center conversation. This isn't a place where you go and shoot just jump shots, or a place where you get some water or run outside and kick soccer. This is a transformational facility that will change the lives of people in this community. And for so long, we've had our communities being plagued with crime, being absent of economic development. And I don't know that this can wait. I am respectfully requesting that we have the conversation about Bellevue now and not worry about other projects except for those that are in this conversation, and that we vote on this particular project today.
Well, Mr. Taylor, I said I would listen today, but what I have heard concerns me, and that is you think that your project is different from everybody else's and deserves to be at the top of the list.
No, I disagree. I think it is a project that should be considered. Respect, you have the floor.
What I have said is I think all 17 rec centers, or what you want to call them, have a right to be heard. And I don't know where Carl Russell is, might be in Miss Burke's ward, whatever. And this may be the best one there. But I think, you know, you asked for this, not the committee. You asked to get out of line and get to the front before we've even heard what all the other 7 council members may have concerns in their ward. I have one in my ward, has nothing to do with the rec center. I got a road that was promised in the 2014 bond referendum that we don't have the money to build. That we made a legal obligation, it's listed in the bond package to widen a road that we don't have the money for. How are we going to do that? So I think the city manager has made a valid suggestion, and that is to have a committee of the whole where we can look at both the 2018 bonds in more detail and an array of requests we have had, and it's been a lot more. By the way, the group we had in January, I think the mayor kind of put that list together, or somebody did. I didn't.
No, staff did.
Staff,
I didn't.
Okay, staff
Staff
did.
did.
And I think there was a general revolt at the January finance meeting that all 8 members of the council need to have input to that list, and I'm still hearing that today, that at least from 4.5 council members, that they want to be heard. And we're not saying no to Bellevue, we're simply saying Bellevue should be heard at the same time we hear what does Carl Russell need, what does Miller Park need, what does anyone else need. But anyway, yes, sir.
Two couple comments. In preparing for this meeting, and the question of transparency and how this stuff is presented, I was surprised to find this buried in this document where it was, where we would talk about on the regular agenda, we would actually show up as a separate line, the parking lot, which had come up in the 5 or 6 projects that were presented back in January. I mean, I expected that as a separate line item. And then we go through 3 or 4 grants that we got and little stuff, and then buried down in the bottom of the document is a $1.5 million project that had been sort of discussed in January, but had not gotten, and now we're all discussing it. You know, I think how this thing was I don't know how the agendas are put together. I don't know why it's placed where it was, but I really almost considered this document, this particular thing, which obviously has created a lot of conversation, was buried in the bottom of the document, and that bothered me, actually. Second thing is, I will support this. I think the city has got to be nimble enough to take advantage of opportunities when they arise, and sometimes we can't capture everything in the bond project, in the bond that was approved, that we can get everything wrapped into that we want. And so when things appear, you know, that seem to be opportunities that are important for this community as a whole, not just one ward, but as a whole, you know, I can see the validity in bringing that up to us. Now, whether tonight's the night to vote, I don't vote, so you guys got to decide on it. But I do think that there's a strong argument for this particular project, and I was happy to see it on the list when it was presented to us in January, and happy to see it now still being discussed.
Okay. There's 4 members of the committee here. What I'm hearing, and I may be wrong, and we'll let these 4 people decide, I don't think it's a controversial on the first 3 items in this agenda as far as the police money and the stormwater and all that. But I'm hearing support for the city manager's thing to have a committee, the whole meeting to discuss this as well as the other items. If that's not, I'll entertain any motion anyone wants to make. There's 4 people that can make a motion up here. Yes, ma'am.
Comment, then a motion. I think we should have a committee of the whole, and I think we should have it within the next 30 days.
Okay. All right.
To go ahead and be able to get the project or whatever's on the way. It's got to be within the next 30 days. April has 5 Mondays, I think, if we do it on Monday or whatever, but we need to get this done within the next 30 days and make a decision so that Councilmember Taylor and Councilmember Burke and Bessie and all of us can move forward on what the projects are going to be and or what we're going to do with this limited obligation bond money. Okay. Therefore, I make a motion that, I'll make the motion that we table this, but we have a committee of the whole meeting in the next 30 days. Can I do that? Where's the attorney?
I guess we can do that.
Can I do that?
Do you want to separate this item into 2 separate items?
Yes.
First, yeah.
Yeah.
Take it off of those items, the 3 items that.
To approve the 3 items.
Approve the 3 items.
Okay, so you can approve, you can do that. You can approve the items, but you'll have to separate it and bring this one, you know, back so we get proper notice of this one item.
Okay. Mr. Mr. McIntyre. And I'll take that as a motion.
Okay.
And we are considering the parking deck outside of this.
It's been put off till next month unless
Yeah.
they come back and tell us.
But it's not part of this special?
No.
Okay,
No.
got it.
Okay. All right, we have a motion to approve the 3 items and the 4th items to be held to a committee of the whole meeting to be held during the month of April.
Comments?
Wait, but let me see if we get a second. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Do I have a motion and a second?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, now, comments. Mr. Taylor.
I can say that I just don't like what I saw here today. I think to hold one project until we get to talk about yours, I don't like this act. I consider it to be a very aggressive act, and I think the people in this room also consider it to be a very aggressive act, and we won't forget what we saw here today. And I mean that sincerely.
But Mr. Taylor, there's 240,000 people in this city.
And I represent 30,000 of them
That's right.
who have been
Right.
overlooked for years, and we're tired of it.
No, they're not. I don't have a basketball court or a swimming pool in my ward that the city owns, or a golf course. These people, all 8 people, deserve to be heard on their concerns, and that's all we're doing. And I am offended that you think you deserve to jump to the front of the line because,
Well, we're two
You won't
offended
listen.
people. You've heard my comments.
okay, we have a motion. Please vote. It's approved. Thank you.
I apologize to those who came today. We'll keep working.
All right, we now go to G1, please.
Item G1, report on the Transforming Urban Residential Neighborhood and Turn Program.
This is just for information. Ms. Ford, who's going to give this? Ms. Newman?
Ms. Newman will present.
If you will remind everyone what the TURN program is, please.
Two parts to this.
This is G1.
Q1, but then we vote on G2.
We grew up together.
Good afternoon,
Okay.
Chairman Clark, Mayor Pro Tem Burke, members of the council. I'm here to talk a little bit about the Transforming Urban Residential Neighborhoods program. As a little backdrop, TURN was created as a result of the bond initiative. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get my cursor right here, pardon me. There we go. The idea was created back in 2014 and was part of the general obligation bonds that were passed by the taxpayers. It was $4 million dedicated to this particular program, and the primary objective was to rehabilitate housing for low to moderate income households in transitional neighborhoods. Part of the idea, though, was to do more than our traditional minimum housing code repairs. And pardon me, I'm getting over a little something, so
That's
please
fine.
excuse me. The idea was, well, first of all, let me mention, too, that there were a lot of citizen concerns about the status of neighborhoods, the condition of housing, and that's part of the background of what created this opportunity. Especially, again, in declining residential areas. The idea was to provide assistance to homeowner-occupied units, as well as small multifamily units, up to 4 units, potentially owned by investors. And with those particular investor units, however, they were required to rent those to individuals who were still low to moderate income, so below 80% of area median income. They also had to agree not to raise rents above a certain percent over a period of time, and various other requirements. So additional objectives, as you'll see, was to conserve housing stock, correcting conditions that were detrimental to public health, safety, and general welfare, and basically trying to encourage private investment in our neighborhood. So part of the thought being if we could catalyze some of the renovation work with homes, then that would create other opportunities for investor owners to maybe do some additional work, or for others who may not take advantage of the program to also decide that they wanted to improve the homes in their area, and then that way you could kind of maximize the targeting of impact. So there were eligible areas identified based on partly a blight analysis that was done by the department a couple of years leading up to 2014. And that study showed kind of like cluster patterns of areas that had high code violations. And so neighborhoods were divided into tiers, Tier 1 and Tier 2, with Tier 1 neighborhoods having the highest number of violations. But the other thing about a Tier 1 neighborhood was that those had present either active neighborhood associations and or a community development corporation, a nonprofit organization, that could be a resource in helping to revitalize the communities. So what we had was the decision to focus in 5 primary areas, 4 of them being Tier 1 areas and 1 being a Tier 2 area, and you'll see those listed on the graphic in front of you. And there's a map that kind of breaks down those tiers. I apologize that we weren't able to zoom in a lot better for this one, but this was from the original map that was used for the program, which broke down the neighborhoods in Tier 1 and Tier 2 areas. So the darkest areas are your Tier 2, and the kind of burnt orange are your Tier 1. So that's where some of those primary focus areas were located. So there are a few requirements for houses to be suitable. One is you couldn't be on the demolition list or eligible for demolition, meaning the cost to repair the program was more than 65% of the value. They could not have received prior assistance from us for rehab work, no bankruptcies or foreclosures, and of course, because we try to have a uniform process to make sure that there aren't any environmental hazards and hazardous materials present, we have every property that we work with go through an environmental review. Those alone can take a little bit of time to complete as part of the larger process, which we'll talk a little bit about, not only here, but in the next item on the agenda. So for owner-occupied homes, we had 3 types of assistance. You see that the loans are amortized over 20 years. 1/5 of the loan can be forgiven for each year up to 5 years. So basically a minimum of 60 payments needed to be made over a period of 5 years, and part of that loan is forgiven. Have assistance available again for investor owners, which were just direct loans or forgivable loans. And I'd already mentioned about leasing to families that are below 80% of area median income and restrictions on raising rent for 7 years. And there's also a forgiveness provision for investor owners. Presently, and when the program was created, there was a cap on assistance at $45,000 per unit, or total cost of rehab if it's less than $45,000. The cost of rehab could not exceed 95% of the after rehab appraised value. And then, of course, for all those properties built before 1978, we also included in that maximum dollars to abate any lead hazards. And that's just a quick infographic showing how the uptake of the program, meaning the breakdown between wards of the number of loans that have taken place. And so as you'll see, I'm sorry Councilmember Taylor is not here to see this, but his ward had the most active participants in the program.
Ms. Burke, you have a question?
Yes, I was going to ask the question, how did you get them to participate? What do we do?
Well, that's one of the interesting things we're going to get to in just a minute, because the way the program was designed, I'll just say a little bit right now, it was designed to work in partnership with community neighborhood associations, be that a neighborhood association or a community development corporation. And so it was supposed to be a partnership, as I understand it, and those organizations would help market the program. They would help homeowners actually complete their applications, and they would submit those applications to the department on their behalf. And in exchange for their partnership, they could be given grants of 3% of either the maximum loan amount or whatever the amount of the loan was for that particular owner who got the loan. And so that was kind of to incentivize the partnership, was to get this 3%. And those monies were to be used to go towards beautification of the neighborhood. So those funds would still be invested in those particular neighborhoods. So that was the program design. As I'll get to in a moment, one of the impediments was that particular aspect did not take off. And then some of the other impediments I'll get to, and especially around staffing, played a large role in probably some of the unevenness, if you will, where you see participation in the program.
Okay. Thank you.
So I know we have a little bit of time, so I don't want to rush too much, but I want to kind of get to those main points, if I will,
Yeah.
since I've got another
Keep
one.
going.
All right, so this is where I talk about the community-based nonprofits. Again, talks about the benefits they were to receive. We had no applications come from them, although some did receive a stipend for loans that were just simply approved in their target area. We had serious staffing issues with the
Yeah.
program, which we have finally now stabilized with 2 dedicated staff people, and that's just been just barely over a year now that we've had 2 dedicated staff people for this program, 1 loan officer, 1 construction advisor.
Could you comment, because when you read the report, the turnover was a big issue.
Yes, sir.
Was that just bad luck, or?
I would say so.
Okay.
I would say so. Just, yeah, bad luck. But we're stable now. We intend to stay stable.
Thank you.
So the program guidelines created a little bit of a challenge because they modeled after the minimum housing code. And so what we found is, especially because in many instances we had significant deferred maintenance, the cost to really do a rehab, to really improve the appearance and condition, the cost outweighed the program cap. So in many instances we would go in and we had to fix a lot of those minimum housing code problems first, which left very little money for actual improvements to the property. So again, that's one of the items in the next agenda item that we'll come to you about to maybe help improve the program going forward.
And I will say, the next agenda item is suggested changes to the program. We'll get to that. when we
Get to all the lending guidelines, correct. So again, we talk about how that $45,000 came to be the maximum loan amount. And of course, we believe that that's going to increase because we've had challenges with construction prices increasing since the recovery from the housing crash. We've seen that prices have continued to increase. So we want to modify the existing program guidelines, increase the financial cap, and try to re-engage that community collaboration. So as you'll see with modifying the guidelines, looking more to improve the property, so going above those minimum housing code repairs, in terms of simplifying the loan processing, because right now loan committee meets once a month. We're looking to expedite some approvals for loans that may fall under certain dollar amounts, and so we'll be proposing that the department director be given approval up to $20,000, from $20,001 to $30,000 that the city manager makes the approval, and then anything above $30,000 goes to loan committee, which means that, you know, those things between staff can move a lot faster while we wait for the monthly loan committee meetings. Again, increase the cap to $65,000, which would be able to provide more assistance, potentially then have the opportunity to really increase property values. Certainly that can lend more to improving neighborhood appearance and could potentially leverage more investment. With our core program, we would look at trying to re-engage those community-based neighborhood associations, and then also, now that we have dedicated, stable staff, you know, that staff can also try to get out and do more in conjunction with our engagement of the neighborhood groups. So those would be some of the ways we're looking at improving the program going forward. And we still obviously have some funds from the 2014 bond program that we're working through, and it is our proposal that we would dedicate an additional set of funds from the 2018 bond program to continue it, especially in those wards like the Southeast, where there's already been a lot of utilization, and the pot of funds for some of those wards have already declined to almost zero. So we would want to keep that momentum going in those areas, and then really get out and beat the streets in those areas where there's not been much uptake.
May I suggest go ahead and do G2, which are your recommendations? That was just a report. There's no action there.
Right.
While it's all fresh in our minds.
Yes, sir. do we want to call it for the record?
No, that was just information.
No, for G2, because
Oh,
G2 is action.
please, well, Secretary, please read G2, excuse me.
Item G2, resolution approving modifications to the lending guidelines for single-family rehabilitation and the Transforming Urban Residential Neighborhoods Term Program.
Now, there are on my sheet 6 specific proposed modifications.
G2, okay. I'll just skip to those.
Yes, ma'am, that's what I want you to do. Now, folks, this is what the staff is recommending to change in the program based on the report we just heard.
Okay, so we want to modify the guidelines, modify the amount of assistance, revise the limitations on assistance, and shorten the loan processing time. And I'm going to struggle here with my glasses. So one of the recommendations is that we eliminate deferred loans. And in your packet is also a side-by-side analysis of each particular program that we had. So we were kind of merging a couple of programs because we had a tremendous number of programs. So we're consolidating some programs to make them easier. But we want to do away with deferred loans because those loans, they're on our books forever, and they take a lot of staff time to double-check income, to see if they move into a payment status, and so forth. And we're finding that we end up with a lot of defaults and foreclosures. And so we're looking at just maybe going to straight forgivable. There's some information that's later in your packet that shows kind of what some of our peer cities are doing. A lot of our peer cities are doing grants and forgivable loans. We were one of the few that required repayment. So I talk about the benefits of that, but also having a 20-year regulatory agreement or deed restriction so that if we're starting to put $60,000, $65,000 in a house, we don't want you turning around in 5 or 6 years and flipping that house and getting all that equity and that benefit out of it. So we want to have a deed restriction that keeps that affordable for that 20 years and have you stay as a homeowner in that property.
How about if they moved or whatever and had to sell it?
Hardship.
Well, then whatever's left from that forgivable period.
So it's forgivable over a number of years?
Over a number of
That's
years.
fine.
Mhm,
That's what
over
Habitat
10
does.
years. Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, then the next is increasing the program guideline, the caps, to 65,000. That's what we're proposing both for turn as well as for our general rehab program, so that we can actually do more to help those houses and try to increase their actual property value. For emergency repair, changing that limit up to 15,000, because we're finding that some of these emergency repairs are, by the time you put in an HVAC or a roof, and those are for system failures. So health and safety items, so your roof, your plumbing, electrical, gas, those kinds of things would be emergency repair. So we kind of collapsed emergency and urgent repair together. And then the next one was our physical accessibility program, what we usually called or referred to as handicap. Increase that amount as well, and then looked at being able to change the flooring throughout the house, because flooring can be a major trip hazard if someone is handicapped, and also modifying all of the bathrooms in the house rather than just one bathroom, so that homeowner can have full use of their home and be totally mobile. We want to eliminate repeat assistance unless it's one time for an emergency, because we have some people who come back over and over again. They're maintenance people, and that's not sustainable for our program. And it gets in the way of other people having an opportunity to come who've never been with us. Because of inequities with property values, we are proposing to eliminate the equity requirement, and we'll just look at the after repair appraised value. Because if people need help, they need help, and the equity shouldn't be a factor. And then we're encountering issues around pest infestation and hoarding. And it's difficult for staff to go in and really get an assessment of the work that needs to happen in a house, and certainly to subject employees to that kind of hazard. We would like to hold going into those homes until those individuals can get some assistance to actually clear out, declutter, or what have you.
Do we have is there an organization that can assist them?
Not a specific organization, but there are some social service agencies that we can
Okay.
refer folks to try to get some assistance, to kind of get their houses taken care of. And then we can come back, do our usual assessment, and render assistance as needed.
Okay, thank you.
And then again, I mentioned already the loan approval authority that we're requesting. And I know this is separate from generally what we do for purchasing and what have you. So only in this instance are we asking for some different approval thresholds. Again, for the director to do up to 20,000, city manager up to 30, and then the rest go to loan committee as normal. And then that's kind of the comparison I mentioned earlier about what some of our sister cities are doing, and that's just kind of some highlights. And this came as a result, kind of like a chat and chew that took place over a series of months, culminating not long before I actually arrived here in late 2017. But you'll see that one of the interesting things we found was that the time to process loans, we were one of the quicker cities, and I know it probably seems a little hard to imagine. Now, granted, we did encounter some problems in general with our backlog, but overall, we have tended to have a quicker approval process than our peers, and have produced more in general than our peers. But that's just a little quick overview of that item.
Okay, thank you. So we do have on G2 is a specific suggestions or guideline changes that we will need to vote on. Are there any questions, comments? Hang on a minute, Mr. McIntosh, or Ms. Adams, whoever. Ms. Adams, you go first.
I think this goes a long way towards simplifying it, and I know out of the $4 million that the voters approved back in 2014, we've still got 2.5 sitting there, and our housing needs are still essentially as bad as they were before. So I think it was the process was very daunting. I think it was difficult for staff. I think it was difficult for people who wanted to participate as well. I'm assuming this flow chart is the new flow chart?
I'm sorry.
The flow chart that was in our report. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yes, that
That's
is.
new, improved, streamlined,
Yes.
still complicated flow chart.
Yes, sir, it is.
It's a complicated process.
It really is. And we're hoping, and thank you for mentioning that, and we're hoping still that to try to maybe run a couple of processes on parallel tracks. So for instance, maybe actually doing the appraisal at the same time we order the credit report, rather than doing everything in a linear fashion.
Right.
Maybe being able to kind of do some things along parallel tracks to even achieve a little bit more savings in time. So but yes, that step-by-step process.
But it is
getting involved.
it's a complex process at best.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that as we go through the process with the Affordable Housing Commission, that we may pick up some other ideas that other communities are doing, because I think if we can continue to make this just less struggle for people to get their hands on and be able to do, the better off we are. So.
Yes, and with the new software that we have as well, we're looking at how it has also saved some staff time. As before, staff had to manually enter everything, and that created more opportunity for errors and so forth. Now, you put that homeowner's information in, and all of the relevant pages auto-populate from that initial information. So that's a time saver just by itself. So we're looking at various ways to achieve efficiency.
Thank you.
Ms. Burke?
Well, I was going to say, I do appreciate this report. I'd been talking to Ms. Logan Ford about the turnaround in the city manager. We need to do business in more of a business-like way.
Yes, ma'am.
This seems to be leading us toward that effort. Those of us who are affected the most by this, we have been very frustrated as elected officials.
Yes, ma'am.
So I think this will give us a test now
Yes,
to
ma'am.
see, and I thank you for it.
Thank you.
I have just one question, one comment. In here, in one of the pages was a list of by last name, I think, of who we've done so far.
Yes,
Can you give me just a rough feel for how many of those were rental versus ownership?
all ownership.
All ownership.
We've had no uptake from investor owners.
Okay, because they do have, they're listed as one of the potential participants.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Also, just as a comment, this is in community development of public housing tomorrow. This is really probably more in their bailiwick, but there are some numbers on the page, so we get to vote on it as
Yes,
well.
sir.
Can I get a motion to accept the guidelines? We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. all in, please vote, and we'll, okay, that is approved. Thank you very much.
Thank
And
you.
again, if you are on the committee tomorrow, you'll get it again. Okay, we'll now go to G3.
Consider measure.
Oh, excuse me.
Chairman Clark, we need staff would like to hold G3 in committee until next month.
Okay.
For a chance for the developer to have a conversation with the council member of the ward, so we'd like to hold it for a month.
So without objection, that is held. I'm actually 3 minutes to finish. Let me just make a comment, because we had a fairly feisty meeting today. Financing is always difficult because there's always more needs than there are resources, be it your own checkbook or a company or a nation or a city. This is probably going to be one of the more difficult budgets that I've been in 18 years, and I think this kind of addendum to the budget, which is these COPS funds, is probably going to be extremely difficult. I suspect before it's all said and done, we will have $30 to $40 million asked for, and that does not include, and one of my biggest concerns is the 2018 bond package, which was $120 million. If you go back to the 2014, luckily we sold the bonds above par, which gave us another bin, what, 5-7 million?
It's more like 10 million.
10 million. So that covered a lot of contingency, and then we were able to find some money here and there. But I don't know how much contingency money's in that 120 million, and we may well be looking at how do we cover overruns, contingencies in the 2018. And understand, and I looked at Ms. Saunders earlier, this $20 million is what she thinks we're going to have over the next 5, 7, 10 years. I mean, it's kind of the borrowing capacity that has not been used up because of the 2 bond referendums. So I hope no personal feelings were hurt, but it is tough, and that's why we get paid the big bucks to struggle with it. And I will simply say, as the chairman, I think my #1 goal is to be sure everyone at this table has a voice and can be heard. And also, it's my job to come up with something that 5 people agree on, or 4 plus the mayor. So anyway, I'll leave that as it may. Ms. Burke, you had your hand up?
Oh,
or-
no,
Okay, Mr.
I did want to add, I did have a conversation with the county. They sold school bonds last week, and they still had the ability to get about a $6 million premium on an $85 million issuance. Now, we're not going to sell bonds for another year at least, so the market could change, but we might have at least, that was good news that they were still getting a premium. The other thing, Councilmember, or Chairman Clark, I did talk to the mayor here real quick. We have this council's already scheduled a meeting at Committee of the Whole on April 15th at 5 o'clock to go over trial balance. We're scheduled, it's already on your calendar to meet on April 15th, tax day, at 5 o'clock to go over the trial balance budget.
Okay,
We could be ready if you want to add to that meeting and say come earlier, 3:30 or so.
That'd be fine.
Go.
Let's do it. Okay.
Has anyone heard, can the county put off the vote on the? If by chance they can't, then I would say put it on the general agenda without a recommendation from a committee, and add as much information as we can, and we'll go forward from there. Okay, no objection, we are adjourned, and public safety will meet in
At 6:05.
6:05.